Hello there. Um, so first of all, apologies for the shirt. Apparently, there's been a poll, and at least all the females in the Cathcart family think this is my worst shirt. I don't know if I'm blending into the background too much, but as much as I thought, you know, too many references to Donald Trump or racism problems or divorce I thought that was going to be, a bit controversial. Apparently, the worst thing is this shirt. So I'm just saying tough. Anyway, secondly, the other thing is that it's once you do this for as long as we've been doing this, I'm not making it sound as if it's going on decades, but the thing you realize, not everybody reacts to the same things. The things that connect you to God are not the same for everybody else. And so you kind of have your own default settings. And one of the things that um, I have noticed over the last few weeks is that G- my apologies, Jackie takes a tremendous amount of enjoyment from. We'll get to it in a minute or two. Just her mum's good at doing plants and pruning and all that kind of stuff, and I'm going to show you her exploits, or more to the point, God's exploits in the world of nature. But I just thought I'd start appropriately. This is Psalm 8, and it's verses 3 and 4, and verses 6 and 8. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you've set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them? Human beings that you care for them? You made them rulers over the works of your hands, and put everything under their feet, all flocks and herds, and the animals of the wild, the birds in the sky, and the fish in the sea, all that swim the paths of the seas. The psalm writer there looks at nature and finds God. And as I say, I don't think this way, but it was just watching Jackie, I realised Jackie's mother will probably feel closer to God in her own garden than she will in a church. And while I think obviously going to church is important, what I also recognise is lockdown has been far less of an has had far less of an impact on people who are get green fingers and find themselves close to God, not when they're in a house of God, but when they're in God's world and dealing with the issues of cultivation and just the things of nature. So, and this is probably going to go a wee bit topsy-turvy, but I need to kind of let you go and see it. So, here we go. This is what Jackie has been, let's just say she planted relatively, well, just a few weeks ago. And if we kind of go down to the bottom there, oh, there we go. You can see them. If you can just see at the bottom there, they, there's a tiny wee one, two smaller ones, and then quite a bit. I mean, if that was a red one, that would be ready for picking, that one. He is just ecstatic. I mean, overjoyed about the fact that um, her exploits in terms of getting these tomato plants to literally bear fruit. Is that the phrase? No, bear tomato plants. She's been pruning. Now I'm sure you'll agree. It appears. I mean, not by me. I have no knowledge at all. But the word she's getting is, I think she needs to prune a bit more. So we could go down the true vine. The Father is the vine dresser, and Jesus is the true vine, and his. So we've done that obviously recently. It was more just it's the psychology of people to give permission to let God be in the places where God is. And you realize for some people, it's not a Sunday morning and it's not a church and it's not the kind of hallowed sacred architecture, but it is being in the glass house and in sorry, the greenhouse, and pruning the tomato plants. It's that sense of pruning. I can't talk about it as if I know what I'm talking about, because I don't. What I'm saying is, because I don't, the thing I do recognize is I need to make allowances for the fact that there are people who come close to God in ways that I don't, but that's okay. And I guess what I'm saying is, if you have benefited, if you have coped during lockdown in a spiritual sense because you've got a garden, because you have got the flowers that are blooming, and just smelling that aroma that whatever flower it is gives you. Or sometimes it is the kind of practical stuff of planting it, pruning it, growing it, harvesting it, and then cooking it, and then eating it. It's that sense of being part of God's creation and knowing God's blessing in that way. I realize it's really important that you kind of validate that and recognize that is something where you feel close to God. There's a spirituality there which it's not how I connect with God, and that's okay for me, as in if it's not my way, then as long as there's another way. But because it's me that does these thoughts for the day, there are times when that kind of path, that route to God, that sense of spirituality that comes from being with nature, it wouldn't be my first step, but it's still very real. And more importantly, it should be in this country. There's often debates in academic levels as to, what is Celtic spirituality? And unquestionably, a lot of people kind of read back into history stuff that wasn't necessarily there. But what you do find in a lot of the kind of non-Roman missionary, the kind of the Celtic fringe of Europe that was evangelized by people who didn't come from Rome, they came from other parts of Christendom, and they tended, certainly in this country, there's certainly a perception that they focused on nature more because they purposefully didn't see buildings being necessary, because it was actually being close to the land, working the land, harvesting the land. That proximity to the land was something that was the means by which people had that blessing, and it was the way in which God was real. If that's you, and if you've been blessed through lockdown specifically because you've had more time to get access into your garden, then tell somebody. Let folks know that God has been closer, not because Flemington Hallside's done a service on YouTube, or not even necessarily thoughts for the day, but recognize that there are times when God finds you because God has got you in the hollow of his hand, and he will come to you via the method that connects with you. And it might be growing your tomatoes or your spuds or your daffodils or whatever. And that's the example that's kind of out with my knowledge, but I know is very common. What I was going to say, if there are any other comments, any other roots that come that where God becomes real to you, I think I pointed the last time and I got it the wrong way. It's not down there, it's down there. I think the point being, how does God connect with you? If it's not necessarily scripture, or if it's not necessarily being in a church, if it is through nature, or indeed through something else, what is it that brings you close to God? Because ultimately, the path that takes you there is secondary to you get to the point where you're connected with God. And if it's through gardening, through growing, through harvesting, then celebrate that. Because harvest is a big thing in Scripture. And as a consequence, in this industrialized, commercialized supermarket world that we live in, sometimes we can lose sight of the fact that God connects with us at that most earthy of ways. Give thanks for that, and give thanks for God. Meantime, go with God, because I know God goes with you. Bye-bye.